Alrighty, guys, 'tis the season, apparently, for scary clowns and demonic creatures and all sorts of terrifying things. It's really not. It's the season for giving and for kindness, but here we are on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel and on the Access Blockbusters Pod talking about the latest episode for the HBO and HBO Max show, It Welcome to Derry. So this is going to be a full spoiler discussion on episode 5 of It Welcome to Derry. If you have not seen the episode, no worries, just make sure to save the segment, save the video, and save the podcast for later. I've gotten this question before of why the segments, the individually clipped segments of It Welcome to Derry, basically don't come out until right before the next episode. It's just a scheduling thing for when I lock the podcast episode, but hopefully, if you're tuning in, it's a nice little primer and a nice little, just an appetizer before you watch the next episode. So anyways, that is the hope. And the hope is that as well, if you look back on all of these after the show is wrapped, you can kind of just binge through all of them and hear my thoughts. But anyways, we are here to talk about episode number 5. So honestly, I feel like over the last 2 years, or the last year even, year plus of doing the podcast basically full time, I've noticed a few things about these HBO Max shows. I think generally they're really good. They're pretty good, right? But I noticed that a lot of them start off really strong, start off with a bang, and then kind of fizzle out until you're just confused by the end. And maybe they kind of grapple you back towards the ending, the last couple episodes. But I feel like the middle chunk of a lot of these HBO shows over the past 12 to 15 months have been pretty similar in that regard. I think the one exception has been Penguin. I think Penguin was just phenomenal throughout. But I'm talking about shows like Creature Commandos. I'm talking about a show like Dune Prophecy, or a show like The Last of Us Season 2. I think all of these shows that we've done reviews on the channel, you can go back and check. I feel like every one of those shows, I started out being like, oh, interesting. Okay, really like that. And to be fair, the pilots and the first couple episodes generally of these shows are the ones that have the most to gain by being explosive and by being exciting. So I'm not saying that it's not a common thing to HBO only, right? Some of the Marvel MCU shows are also like that, for example. But I think that I've noticed the trend of, as the episodes go on, I feel the sense of, where are we going? Why are we going this way? And what's the point? I feel like Dune Prophecy was very similar. So I say all this to say, It Welcome to Derry has been a very similar experience to me. I think that It Welcome to Derry started out really interestingly, right? Especially when you were setting up Phil, Susie, and Teddy, I think, was the other kid, and then also Lily and Ronnie as being, these are the new It kids. And then, surprise, 3 of them are dead. And, of course, Maddie gets taken in the first few minutes. So the first episode really did a lot to subvert expectations, which I thought was fascinating. I thought was really, really cool. But then episodes 2 through 4, I understand. Some people in the comments have been saying, well, I don't want this just to be a Pennywise show. I agree. I would prefer if this show was just not Pennywise the entire time, just saying, hey, I'm spooky, look at me, right? But I do think that the show, as presented to us over the last few episodes, has been heading towards the path of Pennywise. And so I felt like, and this is perhaps just my own perception, but last episode felt like the episode where, okay, we gotta go. We kind of have to, lay the groundwork for what the second half of the show is going to be. Instead, I felt like last episode was, I don't know, more the same of, yeah, we're getting there. Well, you'll see him. We're getting somewhere. Don't worry about it. And so at that point, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I think the show is okay. It's been good, but I just don't really know where we're going. Episode 5, I will say, episode 5, I think, is my favorite episode of the 5 thus far. There's 3 more after this, but I think episode 5 is my favorite. And it's not just because we see Pennywise. That is not the only reason, right? We didn't have to see Pennywise the clown himself just for this episode to be good. What I think this episode finally did was bring together disparate storylines. And that, to me, was a big deal. Because, again, it's fine to have a lot of different subplots and a lot of different storylines going on at the same time. If they don't connect in a way that feels satisfying, if they don't connect in a way to which you're understanding why they were placed in that way at different points, then there's no point, honestly. Just simplify. I think, 'tis the season, right? We'll talk about Stranger Things more later, but 'tis the season for Stranger Things. One of the things that I think the shows do so well, and you cannot like season 3 and you cannot like season 2 and whatever, totally fine. But one of the things I think Stranger Things does so well is they have all these different storylines going on, but by the end of it, they all coalesce. I think season 2 is a great example of this, where the characters are split up pretty much the whole show. You have the Will, Mike, Joyce, Hopper sort of contingent in the lab, and then you have Jonathan and Nancy, and then you have Lucas, Dustin, Max, and Steve. And it's episode, I want to say 7 or 8, maybe 6, 7, or 8, one of those episodes, where they all come together, and it feels satisfying. It feels like it makes sense. And so I don't know, maybe I'm just waiting for that to happen here, but finally we have storylines coalescing here. The kids, right? So there's so many characters in the show. I think that's one other thing, to be honest with you, that about the show is there's just too many characters, and it's just hard to get acclimated and to really dive into any one of them in particular when just crazy things are happening all over the place with them. But the kids, right? So we have Ronnie, we have Lily, Will, Rich, and the Maddie character, which we all knew it was Pennywise, right? Of course. It's interesting though that he can kind of take that form outside of the sewers, and he sleeps during the day, but he apparently can just come out, and that's totally fine. So interested to see if that is explored any further. But yeah, we have the kids, and also Marge, I want to say, the one with the missing eye. She's also a part of the kids group as well. And then we have I think Leroy Hanlon, right? He is, the whole military aspect of it all is starting to coalesce with the Native American story of it all. And so they are now exploring the sewers together. And so that is starting to coalesce. And then you have him meeting with the kids. And I thought that scene where he accidentally kills his companion, his fellow soldier there, was really well done, because you understand what he's, what's going on. It's set up so well at the beginning of the episode, where he's seeing his wife, and it turns out it's Pennywise, and so he obviously is trained to shoot, but then it just makes sense when he sees his son that he would also make that same mistake, even though it was actually his real son. So I think all of that played really, really well in the show. It was very dramatic. I will say is it Halloran? I never know how to pronounce his last name, but the guy who has mind reading powers, I feel like he is the least convincing part of the show. Again, not to say that there aren't mystical elements and there aren't crazy fantasy sci-fi things that are going on with Pennywise the Clown. It just feels like his character is so random. I know, by the way, that this is a character that has a lot more or more implications and ramifications to the wider Stephen King universe, right? They mentioned Shawshank, I think, in this episode, I want to say. This is a character I understand that kind of crosses over to different properties. So I get that in other things, there's more exploration of this character. But for me, as somebody who just is seeing this, right, and is not a super big Stephen King fan in general, and is just watching this character feels weird to me. Just oddly out of place, just the magical, mystical kind of character that just kind of dips in and out when he's needed. And there's not a whole lot of explanation as to what's going on there. So that's just me, but that's one thing I've noticed. But again, right, I think this episode, finally, and I really liked, by the way, is it Niebolt, the house? I liked that there's a direction of, okay, we're going to head for this house now, and we're going to track this thing down. And I like that sort of forward momentum of the episode. And then, yeah, I like how everything went wrong, because of course everything goes wrong. You are fighting the enemy on its own, no pun intended, its own turf, and you're going to face the consequences. So now I really feel like, okay, so we're getting the momentum, we're getting what we need to see here. We understand that, yes, this is, we need to lick our wounds, and then we need to move on from here, and what happens now, and also that weird artifact thing that Lily picks up that prevents Pennywise from killing her. So a lot of really interesting things to look at and to monitor as we go forward here. But I think that this episode, I'm not going to say it makes the previous 4 just all of a sudden, oh, these are amazing, these are the best episodes I've ever seen. I don't think so. Just as I said for Agatha All Along, it seems unrelated, but I think the last couple episodes of Agatha All Along really helped to justify a lot of the decisions, the overarching story decisions that were going on in that show. Didn't necessarily mean I loved those individual episodes of The Witch's Road and those mini trials. I wasn't necessarily for me. But I do think that those last couple episodes really helped to make me understand what they were going for. Similarly, I don't think that this episode in itself is going to just make me go, oh, this is, the whole show makes sense now, I get it. But Rather, I think that it just helps to instill more confidence in me that this show is heading in an interesting direction. So those are my thoughts on episode 5 of It Welcome to Derry. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to next episode. I think I'm back on board. What did you guys think of the episode? Let me know in the comments down below.